Hi, Dyslexic Genius here, Brad Hurt. My phone number is 864-236-1680, or you can email me at dyslexicgeniushurt@gmail.com. I'm back on the Edisonic and the Edisonic Governor Spindle Shaft drivetrain, and I assembled it, and it takes me a little over an hour to assemble one. But I've cleaned everything, as you can see here, and I've adjusted everything, and that's what I'm going to talk about in the adjusting. When I first put them together, I only put in the spindle shaft and the governor drive gear. And I only put in the set screw here that fits in to the little slot that's machined into the spindle shaft right here. And that lets me adjust it up and down. And the last screw I do on the finish assembly is put in the other set screw. So let's say we put the spindle shaft in, we've put the governor drive gear in, and we've locked it semi into the slot so I can move it up and down. This is about where it sets here. And then you have a screw here that tightens up on the bearing right here. And then you have this screw here, which is a different size. There's two different size screws on the bottom of the casting here. This one goes into the machine slot in the spindle bearing in the bottom, and this one goes on the outside of the spindle shaft bearing. And they're two different sizes. The next thing I do is I assemble the governor after cleaning it, and on the governors, on the springs that go under here, right here, you have one that has a single hole punched into it, and then on the other end, you have one that's kind of oblong like that, and that's for adjustment. I have videos on how to rebuild governors. But you want to make sure that the single holes go at one end and the oblong holes go at the other end. I usually put my thing is I put the oblong holes on the flywheel part here because it's easier to assemble them because you have to bend down the thing and they springies and I have to. So what I do is I put the governor in, I set this gear right here to the center of the governor drive gear. This is the governor drive gear, and I have set it dead center on this, and I've moved the governor gear. I moved everything down a little so that the gears here in this part of the governor gear, they're running just like that. One's not off or higher or lower. And what that also sets is this shaft here is the tracking mechanism that tracks your tone arm and horn on an Edison machine. And you can see here that I put this gear, this spiral gear here, center into that gear. And that's how you have it. You can't have this high or low. They all have to be gear, spindle gear. It has to be dead center. It can't be higher or lower. Then I adjust everything. These screws here that hold the bearings in place on the governor and the tracking gear system don't have to be tight. You can just snug them with your hands and they're fine. But you want to make sure you oil all the screws when you assemble. And on the insides of the governor right here where the bearing goes in, you want to put a little drop of oil in the hole, and then when you put the bearing in the hole, it will hydraulic out and you'll be oiled. It's very easy. This one here, this is tight, just finger tight. What I do is I spin this like that, and to set the governor, I unloosen this screw here that has the other screw at the end of the bearing to hold it in place. And all I do is I back that off a little with my finger. I tighten it up. I crank this in so the governor won't move.
You crank it with your finger?
Crank it with my finger.
Move your fingers, John.
Right here.
You move.
This screw here holds the bearing in place. But
And you tighten it with your finger.
I tighten with my finger. You can undo this screw, put the bearing in. You can turn this one in, and it literally, you saw me flex honing to have the bearings go in and out smoothly. You can spin this, tighten that up, and it'll stop the governor. Now what do? I loosen this up a little, and I spin this, and I say, okay, there seems to be a little drag. You know, you give it a spin and it only goes like that. That's this bearing's too tight. So I back it off just a little bit. If this is a slot, I'm only going like this. I'm only, I'm going
5 or 10 degrees maybe.
5 or 10 degrees maybe. And then when I get it to run, I go, great. I tighten that screw down. I finger tighten that screw down. And that's how it runs. You also have to remember that you have a hole right here at the end of the spindle shaft bearing. The spindle shaft bearing has a hole. And that's to let the oil drain out. Out. Because this is cupped in here.
Okay.
So when we reassemble all the oiling tubes, one of them, this one here, with this little felt, will be resting right in here like that. And it'll wick right in. Because remember on my previous video, I said you oil the top of your spindle shaft and the oil just dribbles all the way down here. And when you pull an Edison motor out, you'll find a big pool of oil and grease built up right here. And it's dripping off on the bottom of your machine. You know, this is a lot of fun. But once you're done adjusting how I've talked to it about this, you give this thing a couple runs, and that's dead silent. And that's how they should be, and it's running extremely smooth. This is a lot of fun, and that's my tip for the day.